for your fancy tea thing.
That's for sure.
All right, it looks like we are streaming and on YouTube, correct, Greg?
Correct.
All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order, our January 4th Planning Commission meeting. And I'm going to do a roll call. Commissioner Heising,
Present.
Commissioner Labange,
Present.
Commissioner Maggio,
Present.
Commissioner Mason,
Present.
Commissioner Strom,
Present.
Vice Chair Radnich,
Present.
and Chair Farzan is here. Thanks, everybody, and I hope everybody had a good New Year and holidays. Can I have somebody move to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Yes. All right, I'm going to give that one to Commissioner Maggio for the second. And we're going to do a roll call on all of this again. Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Labange,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Strom,
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich,
Aye.
and Chair Farzan, aye. So unanimous. Do we have any public comments for anything not on the agenda, Greg?
If anyone has any public comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda, go ahead and raise your hand. No one is calling in on a phone, so *9 is not needed. Steve Thomas, I understand, is with with the application, so no public comment at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have nothing on the consent calendar or continued public hearings. We have a new public hearing for MS 501-20. And can we please have a staff report, Jonathan?
Yes.
Thank you.
So MS 501-20 is a minor subdivision request to divide an existing commercial property. So first, let's zoom in to the property to see where it's located in the context of the city. We are in the downtown, being south of Mount Diablo Boulevard, to the north up here, and west of Moraga Road. The property at 3547 Wilkinson Lane is accessed by a private road known as Wilkinson Lane, coming off of Moraga Road. Property is located here at the end of Wilkinson Lane. In the surrounding area, we have a variety of uses. So there's a tax provider to the north, multifamily residential dwelling units to the east, religious institution to the southeast, and then restaurants and retail uses all throughout La Fiesta Square. There is a creek that runs along the rear of the property that we'll get to in a moment. And now I'd like to show the tentative parcel map. Okay, let's see. There we go. So we're seeing the parcel map here. The project proposes to subdivide the commercial property into two commercial properties so that each of the two structures sits on its own individual parcel. Being in the retail business district, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet, and the proposed parcels are just north of 10,000 square feet each. So here is the new parcel line, and each of the two existing buildings being on their individual lots and having their own individual parking. In the retail business district, there is, again, minimum lot size 5,000 square feet. There are lot depth and lot width requirements that are satisfied by this configuration. There is an open space requirement for 20% of each lot dedicated to open space in the retail business district, and each property has greater than that. Parcel A is at 20%, and parcel B is at 22% for parcel A, 29% for parcel B. So each is compliant with the open space requirements. The retail business district is unique in that there are no front or rear yard setbacks for buildings. There is a minimum 10-foot building setback when adjacent to a residentially zoned property or a property that has 4 or more dwelling units, but that is not the case for any of the adjacent properties. So in fact, there are no building setbacks that are applicable to this zoning district or this particular property in the RB zoning district. The zoning district, lastly, has a parking requirement depending on the use of the property. So parcel B would have its own building, and its existing use is an administrative office use, which requires 3.3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So for parcel B, the parking requirement would be 6 spaces and 8 are provided. For parcel A, there's an existing building that does not have a tenant at the moment, but there are 9 parking spaces provided. So when the business owner comes to, the property owner comes to the city with a new tenant, we'll review their activity classification to make sure, again, that it complies with the parking requirement there. So the retail business district is for the zoning ordinance, and in the downtown specific plan, this property is within the downtown retail district, which of course envisions retail to be the prominent use, but certainly envisions much more than that. So retail uses, banks, civic uses, personal services, restaurants. So even though that the 2 parcels are not changing in land use, each individual parcel is currently compliant with the downtown specific plan designation. So moving on to the conditions of approval. As you can see from the staff report, the recommendation is to come back at the January 19th Planning Commission consent calendar for approval resolution findings and conditions of approval. But first, I wanted to touch on some of the conditions that are to be expected ahead of that meeting. So first is access. As I mentioned previously, the parcel is accessed through a private road known as Wilkinson Lane. And Wilkinson Lane is more or less just a collection of informal access easements, in that unlike Moraga Road, where there is a clear division between private property and the roadway, Wilkinson Lane consists of private access easements that are given up to each one of these properties on Wilkinson Lane. In reviewing the title report and the survey, we didn't find that the existing parcel had at least written access to go through Wilkinson Lane and to cross these private properties. So in looking at the title report, we'd expect to see something along the lines of the benefit for egress and egress, a 10-foot strip known as Wilkinson Lane. But that's not the case in this property, possibly because these properties were subdivided before the subdivision map back and before access came into consideration. So given that, moving forward, we want to clean up the situation. So as a condition of approval, we require the applicant to provide documentation certifying that parcel A and parcel B have the right to go through Wilkinson Lane and have the right to cross these private properties. Moving on to creeks. So as I mentioned, the property is adjacent to a creek. What we're looking at here is a page from the Downtown Creeks plan. So this property is within the South Reach plan area of the Downtown Creeks plan, and a big component of the Creeks plan envisions a pedestrian walkway going from Moraga Road up through Lafayette Circle. And a portion of that property would be on or adjacent to our subject property for the subdivision. So in working with the city engineer, we would request from the applicant through a condition of approval that they dedicate a strip of land along the western property line for implementation of the Downtown Creeks plan. Also within Downtown Creeks plan is a request to remove remove invasive species and plant native species along that creek bank. So as a condition of approval, we'd ask that they submit a plan detailing how they're going to remove that non-native vegetation and plant new vegetation that's native to that area prior to the recordation of the parcel map. And lastly is a quick comment on conditions of approval for the based on the building department comments. So in the staff report, there's a brief paragraph on the building department comments, and the building department in short is requiring that the property owner demonstrate compliance with the building code for a portion of the property that I'll show here that straddles the property line. So there are 2 enclosed buildings that would sit on each property, but in its current condition, there is an attached patio and attached ADA ramp that is shared between properties. So the county building department wants to make sure that that complies with the California building code, and also that they need to submit documentation saying that each property has the right to use those common areas. So that again would be required prior to the recordation of the parcel map for review by the county building department. So with those conditions, staff recommends that the planning commission review the project, conduct a public hearing, and direct staff to return with an approval resolution, findings, and COAs for the January 19th meeting. Here for any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions? Let's go Vice Chair Radnich.
Thank you, Jonathan. I have one question regarding parcel A and the parking spaces. So I believe you said that currently with the way it's being proposed, 9 spaces would be allotted to parcel A. And then depending on if there's a future tenant, for that use, they determine the parking requirement. So what happens if a use comes in that requires more than 9 parking spaces? What happens then?
There are a few reductions and exceptions listed in our parking ordinance. So that requirement could be decreased based on the distance to BART or through if there's 2 uses for that one building, it could be lowered depending on the characteristics of that business. For example, if one is more active in the daytime, one's more active in the nighttime, then that parking is not going to be so high at any single time. If they go through the parking ordinance and demonstrate that none of those reductions or exceptions are applicable, then they could pay into the city's parking development fund per space.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Maggio.
Yes, thank you, Chair. What would we expect to see in conditions of approval with regard to the shared drive and shared access to the parking? I saw one driveway there. So would it be similar to Wilkinson Lane where they have deeded egress?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, which driveway are you referring to?
The main driveway into the parking.
My recollection is that the driveway would accommodate entrance into both parcels. It's wide enough to.
Yeah, but they'd be crossing one parcel to parcel A to get to parcel B.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So parcel B would need to grant an access easement to parcel A.
Correct. Liability and all kinds of other issues. So I'm sure we'll see that in the conditions of approval.
Right.
Thanks.
Likewise, wouldn't To the chair, just because it's related.
Yeah.
To Commissioner Maggio. Likewise, wouldn't parcel A need to grant to parcel B? Because if you put a truck turn or a turn template on those stalls, I think in parcel B, if someone were backing out and needing to go backing out and then exiting, I think the rear end of that car would also go into parcel A. So I think there need to be reciprocal granting of parking lot easement or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll add that into the condition and work with the city engineer to make sure the language is right.
Just, do you have any other questions, Commissioner Heising, or is?
Yeah, sorry, since I interrupted, I might as well keep going. Regarding the Creeks Master Plan, is there a standard cross section or a set design standard for that walkway?
The details that I found in the plan are pretty conceptual, and I think for this particular walkway, this might be the first piece that the city obtains for that. So I'll need to work with the city engineer to determine exactly where that needs to go and what width it's going to be.
Okay. And then my other question was, when you were talking about the condition of approval to remove all non-native invasive species, has there been an assessment of the creek bank? Is there any erosion or stabilization needed? And the only reason I ask is because now would be the time to condition the applicant to make any improvements on that creek. I mean, assuming not when parcel A is, when that occupant comes in, I mean, now with the map is the time to condition.
Right, that's an area that I haven't investigated as part of this project, but certainly it can be added as a COA.
Okay, yeah, I mean, added only if it's needed. So maybe the city engineer in consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife or California Fish and Wildlife could take a look at it, or some creek expert to determine if we should make a condition for improvements. That was it, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Strong?
Yes, thank you. Jonathan, you mentioned, and it was in staff report about the building department requiring the analysis for compliance with the building code. I didn't catch if you said, will that also go to the fire protection district? Because it looks like in their letter, they couldn't really comment. And my guess was that they care about the narrowness of the lots and
possibly Greg can clarify this if if the fire department will take another, if they typically look at it again before the parcel map is signed. But if not, we can certainly have them look at it again.
We would have to make an affirmative second referral to them, which we can do between now and the next meeting.
and it would be referring whatever the architect consultant puts together.
I'm sorry, referring what
Wasn't the building department was asking for the applicant to hire a consultant and do an analysis of building code compliance with, I guess, is it with the current development and with future development?
For the current development, straddling the common property line.
Okay, so I guess if it's just looking at mostly accessibility issues, then that's not really going to help the fire department. Okay, I was just concerned that the fire department they felt that they couldn't make any comments as opposed to not seeing any issues. Is there anything that we can do? I mean, they didn't ask for specific information.
we can reach out to them and assure them that now is the time to make any comments that they would have on the project and shouldn't hold back.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
In the staff report, it said that the parcel as a whole was 0.32 acres, but then the divided parcels, when you added those together, it was 0.469 acres. Unless I was reading something wrong, but
I can double check that. There's often a difference in the figures provided by the assessor's office and that provided by the land surveyor. So I went based off the assessor's office calculation.
okay, thanks. So when you were going back and forth with the applicant, was there a discussion on why the dividing property line is, I mean, I can see that it's in the middle of the drive, sort of the driving access for the parking. But that seems to make the front width of parcel B fairly narrow. It's only 36 feet. And then if residential was to come in next door and the front parcel wanted to be used for something other than just parking access, then you'd only have 26 feet of buildable space. Did you speak with the applicant about potentially shifting that over to give a width to parcel B that might be a bit more usable?
I did not have those conversations with the applicant.
Okay, ask them. And then, well, maybe this is a question for the applicant too. You, in the staff report, you said that the applicant would be considering whether to sell both properties or one or the other. And when I was out there today, I thought I saw a for sale sign on the building on parcel A, and the parking lot was all roped off. So I didn't know if there was work underway and if the property was already for sale.
The property owner can confirm that. There is work underway for, in addition to parcel B. Earlier in 2020, Planning Commission approved an addition. So that's likely the construction that's occurring right now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason?
Just one general question. You can parcel out however you want. My concern is just if you're separating parcels, we have to assume that they can be developed separately. So the question revolves around how are you plan on handling the documentation for the handicap accessibility? Because if one's developed separately, they may essentially destroy the accessibility for the unimproved property. And then also, does that access easement, is it limited access, or would it cover underground utilities and things like that that could serve both properties? Or will underground utilities simply just have to come in on one property or the other?
I believe that there is a proposed easement for utilities for crossing property lines. I believe Dave Thomas can better answer that question. To the first part about about ADA compliance, are you asking for something beyond the agreement that says that they can share the ADA ramps or ADA parking spaces?
Well, no, the question is, let's say parcel A, they come in, they decide to redo their building, do something different, and they no longer need that ADA ramp because they're taking it in a different way. That by definition would destroy the ADA accessibility for the remaining ramp. And so the question is, it's not like, from what I'm hearing, it's not like there's a shared agreement, but that's not necessarily, I'm not sure if I'm hearing a deeded agreement where each side has to maintain the handy accessible ramp for use by the other property owner.
Greg, if you want to jump on this one too, but I might have to work with the Tom Huggett at the building department. He'll be reviewing the language for that agreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Jonathan? Just one overarching question, Jonathan. Have you talked to the applicant at all about the conditions of approval that you went over earlier?
Yes, they are. They have. They're expecting that all of those would be conditions. So no disagreements with those so far.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Ising?
Yeah, I just noticed something. Tony Coe is not the city engineer, so the parcel map needs to be updated in the engineer's statement. That was it. I just
Thank
saw
you.
that just now.
I think we are ready for the applicant.
Very good. Dave Thomas is coming in to present.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Dave Thomas. Steve Thomas is also here to present the project. And if you could unmute him, Jonathan, I let you know that earlier today.
Just before the meeting, we attempted to, well, he tried to use his audio and it wasn't effective. So we'll go ahead and see what we can do. Steve Thomas is coming in as well. So which of you will be taking the lead?
Hello, Steve Thomas. Can you hear me? Hello.
Mr. Thomas, you have a tremendous amount of feedback coming back with every word you speak. It makes it very difficult to hear you.
Correct. The condition hasn't changed since you tested it out before the meeting. So Dave Thomas, why don't you take it away?
How was that? Oh,
No, it's the same. It's the same background noise. Dave Thomas, are you not able to take over the presentation?
Okay, I've got Steve. We've joined Steve, so let's do this. I think it'll work a little bit better.
It actually became worse.
So we were getting a feedback loop now that the two audios are joined together. So perhaps just one audio stream and.
it worked. No, I tried to call him. And it didn't work.
He had called in and that wasn't working. So
No, I tried to come in on my.
yeah. So if you can unmute Steve or unmute Sam, because Sam Thomas is dialed in as well.
When it's dial in, we only have the phone number to go by. Do you want to give me the last four of that?
He'll be 4334.
We don't have a 4334 dialed in. We have a 8146, and that's the only call in.
Yeah, 8146 is fine too. That's Sam Thomas. There you go.
Very good. So we can see neither of you, and Dave Thomas, we can hear you just fine. *6 on the phone should unmute you, Steve Thomas.
Sam's here. How are you?
We're fine. Who's going to be presenting?
Sam Thomas, Thomas Properties.
Very good. Go ahead.
Glad we're able to get over that technical difficulty. So, Jonathan, thank you for the presentation. Folks, so what we plan on doing is we have an OED, it's in draft, and an OED is an operation easement declaration, and that addresses access into the property, addresses handicap stalls and the ramps that we all spoke about, and the roof areas that we all spoke about. And what that does for both properties after it's subdivided is things cannot change outside of that operation easement declaration, and the property is basically protected by that. So right now we show one handicap stall. Each parcel after it's subdivided will have access to that handicap stall. And same with the parking stalls. It's going to be reciprocal parking. Each parcel, what we contemplate, will have a certain amount of reciprocal parking stalls. There'll be a shared, maintenance agreement. Insurance is going to be addressed in that OED. So a lot of detail will be in that document, and we plan on submitting that to Jonathan here in very short order. We're about a week out from being able to have that document completed. Wilkinson Lane, that has been, the subject property's been located at that location for 100 years. Access from Wilkinson Lane's been there for 100 years. We have title insurance protecting access into our property. There was discussion about us not having right into our property. That's simply not the case. That access exists. We have title insurance for that access, and respectfully, we absolutely disagree that there should be a condition that we have to engage other property owners within Wilkinson Lane to obtain access into our property. Again, we were the first property there. It's been there 100 years, and that's simply not the case. There's title insurance for that. We have absolutely no issue with granting an easement behind our property for a trail. We think that's a great idea. We think having us, the applicant, make enhancements to the creek bank, that's not necessary. We're happy to further discuss with staff other alternatives for that. I think with that, that's about it. So we appreciate your time, and thank you for considering our application.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Do we have any questions to the applicant? Commissioner Strong.
So I have a question about the operation easement declaration. So the way that you described it, it sounds like it's addressing the parcels as they're currently developed, but I'm not totally clear on what happens in the future. Like, for example, we've been seeing a number of projects where these narrow lots are being built out as housing, and there's parking underground, or on the ground level or going down. So I guess my question is, with the configuration and the width of the lots, it may be that in the future, having sort of a symbiotic relationship allows them to be better developed, or allows them more flexibility in redeveloping. But how is that provided for or is that provided for in the legal documents that you're putting in place now?
Thank you for the question. So the operation easement declaration runs with the land. So it's a recorded document. And so once we record that, it's going to define essentially how parking is going to work, how access is going to work, how that ramp's going to work, and exclusive parking stalls will work, insurance will work, maintenance, there's shared landscaping, things like that will function. And so that runs with the land. And, so once that's recorded, that addresses that scenario. So if, for example, if Parcel B were to redevelop it at some point in time, they would have to adhere to that OED. They couldn't. Parcel A and Parcel B are protected entirely by that OED, so they both cannot be affected by one or the other because of that OED.
Okay, so does that mean then that the parking will need to stay exactly as it is, and any redevelopment would mean that the buildings would be in the location that they are and getting taller or maybe overhanging parking, but that's the extent of how the two parcels could be redeveloped?
Can you repeat that question one more time?
Well, the way you described the operation easement declaration details seems very specific to, like, for example, how the parking is laid out now. Keeping the parking as is restricts future development. So is that, am I understanding that correctly, that the parking would have to stay as it is currently, which would mean that future development would basically take place within the existing building footprints?
Not necessarily. So what it would do is so for example, if Parcel B were sometime 50 years from now redeveloped, right, it would have to protect Parcel A, right, with parking stalls, because each are going to have a certain amount of parking stalls, but it's going to be reciprocal. Each will have a certain amount of exclusive stalls. So you have to adhere by that within the OED.
Okay, so it's more of like an allowance for stalls, but they could be located somewhere else on the parcel.
So think of, you're a business owner, right? And you want to have two of your employees have two parking spots where they don't have to go to look for a parking stall, right? And you're whoever, first come, first serve. So you're allowed to assign a couple of parking stalls each, right? And then the balance will be reciprocal. So everyone will be protected by that. And that's kind of typical what we've been doing in our shopping centers and other office developments throughout the region.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense to me. And then with the accessibility, so we've been talking about specifically the ramp that exists there now.
Sure.
How is that described? Because it may be that they, if the parcels are redeveloped, that if there's a ramp, it may be somewhere completely different. And they, like, is one parcel required to provide a certain amount of square footage for the other parcel's access, or? Well,
in our OED, and I understand you haven't seen it, we've been working on this for many months, but we have an exhibit that describes that ramp, and it's a reciprocal ramp. It's shared by, it's called common area, right? And each parcel, each building, each property owner will be sharing in the maintenance of that ramp and the operation of that ramp. So it's going to exist for each of the buildings to be able to use, and for ADA reasons and for access into each building. So it's in that OED. It's that ramp is protected.
Okay, but is there an allowance where if the owner of one parcel wants to completely reconfigure their parcel, that as long as it's in a way that's mutually agreeable, then they can do that?
That's something that's very easily addressed in the OED, where if one parcel wanted to redevelop, that they would have to protect the other parcel with ADA access and handicap stall, et cetera. That's something that we can absolutely accomplish in the OED.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for our education on OEDs. I don't think we've seen one recently.
You bet.
And then my last question was just if you could maybe talk about the width of parcel B, the front width of parcel B, and whether that is flexible or how it was decided and how it's
It was decided by splitting the lot and coming up near where that ramp is, and that was solely it. It wasn't. We thought that was us and our engineer thought that was the appropriate spot. It wasn't meant to burden or benefit one or the other. We thought that was the most appropriate for both parcels. I mean, I personally don't see a benefit to one or the other because again, that OED, with access into the property and how parking's going to work, it kind of splits through, and we thought that was the most appropriate.
okay. All right.
And then also, there's also the one last thing is there's a setback with the creek, and the ramp is 20% open space. So that was the other determining factor by our engineer that dictated that.
Okay. Yep.
So I guess it was a bit more scientific than just drawing a line.
Okay. Yeah, I thought to ask the question because looking at the shape of the lots, it seems to me that parcel A is more developable than parcel B. And my thought was that if the width wasn't, the front width of parcel B was increased somewhat, then that may allow for more to happen in that sort of narrow section in the future, especially if you were having to deal with the 10-foot setback to adjacent residential.
Really, it's the setbacks that are going to determine future redevelopment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, thank you.
You bet.
Have any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, not really a question, but just adding on regarding the map itself, just for the surveyor or engineer that's prepared it. In line with Tony not being the city engineer and Naroop's not the planning director, Joe Cancemilla is not the county recorder, and David Twa is not the county administrator anymore. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, I have one question, Mr. Thomas. You mentioned the title insurance with regard to the access off the easement. So I'm trying to understand if you're confident that you're covered by the title insurance, then why wouldn't you be open to a condition to make sure that it's covered?
Yeah, happy to share our title policy with you and the rest of the commission. Quite simply, it's Pandora's box, right? It's you're dealing with third parties that you don't control, you don't have. For all we know, we get extorted, right? I mean, who knows? And I'm sure they're all great neighbors, but it's just not. It's a burden that you would be imposing on us to try to accomplish something that's not necessary. And if you see our title policy, you'd be able to, make that determination that we are covered with access on Wilkinson Lane.
Okay, and you're willing to share that with the staff?
Yes, and staff does have a copy of our title policy. And please bear in mind, every parcel owner on Wilkinson Lane, and I have no idea if every parcel owner even has what you're referring to at this easement where you can get into it. We don't know. We haven't done the research, and that's not our business. But again, this building's been there for 100 years, and there's title insurance for that access. But it's every parcel owner on Wilkinson Lane would have to come to an agreement and sign off on that agreement for existing encroachments. And that's just for something minor as this lot split, so we can subdivide these two properties so two businesses can come in. It just seems very overly burdensome, and it's really not. I just don't foresee that even possible. But again, we are 100% covered through our title policy for access on Wilkinson Lane into our property, and that's been there for 100 years.
Thank you.
You bet.
We'll move to public comment. Greg, we have any public comment on this topic?
If you would like to comment, go ahead and raise your hand now or hit *9 on your phone. Jeff Gilman is going to come in and offer a comment. Gilman, go ahead.
Hi, sorry for the brightness. I'm adjusted for daytime. Yes, so I'm a member of the Creeks Committee, but I'm speaking just as an individual tonight. And my comments along the lines of Commissioner Hoising's comments. I noticed on the draft map that the creeks referred to as Walnut Creek, and we refer to it as Lafayette Creek. That's the name used in the Downtown Creek Plan. So as long as we're making corrections, I would encourage that one to be made as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilman.
Very good. Any other? So phone number ending 4334 is coming in next.
Hello, this is Steve Thomas. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. Well, I look forward to the day when we can all be together.
Sure thing. Mr. Thomas, right now is public comment for members of the public, not anyone on the applicant team. You will have an opportunity to rebut.
Okay, well, as long as you know I'm here now and I am a Lafayette resident, so I look forward to that. I think there's a couple of things that some of the commissioners mentioned that should still be touched upon.
Very good. Thank you. Any member of the public, not part of the applicant team, would like to comment, please go ahead and raise your hand.
That's it?
That is it. So
we will close public comment and give the applicant a chance to rebut or address some questions, it sounded like, from Mr. Thomas, Steve Thomas. Your time is open again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, thank you. So Sam did a great job touching on the OED, and just so it's all encompassing. It does include all utilities, water, sewer, and so forth. They're all within that document. Any future development on either parcel, it would be within the OED that either they would have to jointly meet handicap access, there's the existing ramp out there, or they would each parcel would have to be able to continue to do that on their own. The lot line that was established was based upon the various requirements that the city has for establishing parcels sizes as it relates to the setbacks from buildings for fire reasons and so forth, for the open space requirements. So a lot of thought went into where that line was placed on the two parcels. And again, on the access, like Sam mentioned, it's been there for 100 years, and undoubtedly, every property owner, there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 property owners going all the way back to Tutus. And undoubtedly, there's going to be curbs and landscape and different things that are going to be encroachment. So it would be a near impossibility to go through that process. It could take years, and even to get through it. And who knows what's going to come out of what people, because they have no motivation. Everybody uses the road, and we plan on our section of the road as part of the redevelopment of the two buildings to repave our parking lot, to repave our section of Wilkinson Lane, to clean all of that up, separating water, bringing in another water meter and so forth to make them as two separate buildings. We believe that, particularly given COVID, that there's a strong desire for folks to have their own building, and this is why we bought the property in the first place. And having each one have its own independent, with its own bathrooms, its own access, and we think that in the future of office, that's going to be a very important future. So as far as future for other uses, for example, multifamily, the city of Lafayette has fairly strong creek setbacks, unlike, say, for example, Walnut Creek, where they're actually allowing developers to use the creek as an enhancement and have decks that go out onto the edge of the creek and creating an enhancer, much like the trail system that's being envisioned for the future. And so the setback of this property makes it quite difficult for doing multifamily on this property. So we're, with 35 years in the business, we see that the highest and best use is for these to be two individual office buildings for, potentially medical in the future. I know the city's working on some things in that regard as well. So that's what we envision, and we think it's a good fit for the property there.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any other questions for the applicant or the applicant team? It looks like we don't, so I'm going to bring this back to the commission for discussion. Thank you to the 3 Thomases. I'm not being funny here. Any comments for the commission? Commissioner Ising?
Sure, I'll go first. So the reason I asked Jonathan the co-op in the Creeks, Mr. Gilman didn't bring this up, seeing he was on the Creeks committee. I think, with the chance to condition, with a parcel map, we have the chance to condition, and I would go a step further beyond just asking to dedicate an easement for the path. I would propose a condition that were to, even though it's a little tiny segment and it would be the first segment, you got to start somewhere in building the path. And as other projects come along, they would add to it. And I realize it would be a path to nowhere. It would sit there as a little stub section of path for a while. But if you don't start sometime, you're not going to get a complete path. So I would recommend we add a condition that asks for the path to be improved. And also, I heard that the applicant didn't have a desire to look at stabilizing the creek, but I still think it's worth looking at it if it should be. The creek may be perfectly fine but all I'm saying is if there's erosion and degradation there that could lead to damage in the future, I would say let's stabilize it now and throw some riprap down there, or whatever Fish and Game will allow is, willow stakes or something just to stabilize the bank. And then regarding the title insurance, I guess I would ask staff, what, absent pushing for a condition that requires the applicant to go get access rights to all the upstream, downstream property owners towards Moraga. But what happens, how does it work with the title insurance for the access? Would it just be, if the title company's offering to cover that or staying there covered through the title insurance, those tenants in those two parcels just continue to use the road until they're sued by somebody? Is that how it works? And then the title company, the title insurance is invoked or triggered, and is that it? So I guess that's my question. How would that work?
Yeah, and I don't think that the condition, and Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, envisioned or was envisioning the applicant for the subject subdivision being required to go execute new access easements with each of the property owners east of the property out to Moraga Road. Simply that they demonstrate that they have legal access through some, so generally that's done by provision of a recorded easement. Very simple to look at that, and staff can read the legal description and what the grant is, and it's very clear. If there's some other evidence that the title company has, in their due diligence in issuing a policy, surely they would have researched the property and whether or not it had legal access if they're going to issue a policy on it. And so whatever evidence they have on file may be sufficient to satisfy this condition. But simply the issuance of a policy, I think falls short of that, because if and when that policy is invoked because of some legal dispute, absent some evidence in the record associated with this action, the city will be a party to that future action, and we've seen that not recently on other factors. So it is, my understanding of the current circumstances, there's nothing preventing the use of the property as two separate buildings under the current situation, but there is a request, an application for the city to make this grant of subdivision, and in so doing, we have responsibilities to meet existing codes and anticipate future litigation. So
understood. That makes sense. And then my last thing, Chair, is recommended condition of approval that I understand the OED covers all the parking and the easements, utilities, and all that, which all makes sense. I would just recommend a condition that requires that staff approve that OED before it gets recorded, and it'd be a condition for the recordation of the map as well, just so that everything that we've talked about tonight is covered in that document before it's recorded. And I'm assuming it would be recorded concurrently with the map. It would all go down together.
Correct. And based on the timing that we heard from the applicant team, I think we can make that an exhibit to the approval resolution.
To the map. Okay. All right. Perfect. Thanks. That was all I had, Chair.
Thank you. Look like Commissioner Maggio.
Thank you, Chair Farzan. In response to Commissioner Heising's comment about creating a stub of a path, I want to ask staff if we have a precedent for that, because I don't recall us ever just creating a slice of path on one lot. Normally, we wait until we have a design and it's a brand new path that goes throughout the whole area. So I just wanted to hear staff's response on that one.
I think generally, certainly in recent years, what Commissioner Maggio expressed of having a larger project and it being done in one fell swoop has been the case. Specific to pathways or along the creek, this may be the first segment. I know there are other areas of pathway, but they seem to be kind of self-contained on a given parcel. I'm thinking of the clock tower building, the backside of that. But so with respect to other plans and improvements, they have been done piecemeal as properties are subdivided or redeveloped. So I think it is a judgment call in the moment, and it may be the case that if it is a slope, that if the bench needs to be put in place to accommodate the path in the future, that aspect could be done, but perhaps not the boards and the decomposed granite or whatever the profile is not. So it would be akin to rough grading rather than finish grading and surface finishes. So we would defer to the Creeks Committee and Public Works and Engineering on that. But we can certainly take back to them the proposed condition of Commissioner Heising and see what their response would be.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Vice Chair Rodnich?
Yeah, so it's just a follow-up, I think probably for Mr. Wolf. So what happens, so if there's an easement on this property for the creek path and the Methodist Church, you know, looking at the figure in the packet on figure 4-8, which is on page 4 of 5 of the staff report, it was the same figure that Jonathan pulled up during his presentation. So who decides when it is time to build the path? So that's my first part of the question. And the second part is, who pays for the design of the actual path and the design of the landscaping? You know, if the applicant would be responsible now for setting aside an easement for a future path, who decides when it's time to put it in, and who pays for that installation and who pays for the design of it? So for anyone from staff, thanks.
Sure, and maybe would be helpful to have either Mike Moran or Matt Luttrop here to speak to that at the next meeting. But it is, again, kind of based on I don't want to call it best practice, but the decision at the time. There have been, so taking, for instance, the Downtown Street Improvement Master Plan, there were standardized design components with that adopted plan, and each individual property as they redeveloped would implement those. So it was a very straightforward. So the city took on the work of the design initially, and then it was implemented by property owner and property owner. In the case of pathways, for instance, be they in the public right of way or over a trail easement, it is essentially when there is a critical mass or a complete trail segment, feasible trail segment, and it is evaluated by the appropriate commissions or committees and the council as to whether to allocate funds towards that for design work. So short of actually constructing the path at this time, I'll call it the Heising proposal, then we could take in an in lieu fee, not the preferred mechanism, I'll say, just because we then need to track and account for that, those monies moving forward until such time as that there's a critical mass or ability to execute the project. So it is a relatively short segment, so I would go fully one way or fully the other of either building it out or the city taking on the incremental cost in the future. And
Okay.
if Commissioner Heising had raised his hand.
Yeah, the Heising proposal, the author is speaking, wants to speak again.
No, I was just gonna say, there's another option too, that's you could have a deferred improvement agreement recorded against the parcel as well. And then when there is critical mass, you trigger that agreement, and then the then property owner has to pay for it. But one of the benefits now is this applicant, assuming they're going to spin off both these parcels and sell them, if there were any improvements made now, it's going to be cheaper now than 5 years from now or 10 years from now, because the cost of materials and labor is going to go up. The applicant can split the cost to each of these two parcels, and they can make, even though the path is solely on parcel A, they can make that part of the purchase and sale agreement and put some of the cost to parcel B as well as parcel A. So it can be done. You could split the baby a bunch of different ways, but deferred improvement agreement's an option as well.
Do we have any more comments? It looks like we do not. Does anybody want to make a motion? I'm proposing, I'm about to nominate somebody since they have a proposal that's named after them now.
I actually have a question for Commissioner Heising.
Go ahead.
You mentioned looking at the stabilization of the creek bank, but how, I wasn't totally following on how did you want to put that in a condition of approval that be analyzed or that work be done now? Or wouldn't that be like in combination with the execution of a path?
Yeah, if we were going to condition the segment of the path to be built, it could be part of that same work. If there is any stabilization needed, just be incorporated into the path improvements.
Okay. And then would we, if we're requiring the path to be completed now, would we want to look at the access along the shared property line, the access easement? Or no, sorry, it's not the shared, it's the west property line of parcel A.
Parcel A, yeah.
Including some kind of pathway along there.
That's where the path is proposed, right? On the Creeks master plan.
Right. Were you just talking about the section that goes along the back of the property, or?
I was just talking about the section wherever Mike Moran is recommending that the easement be recorded I was just recommending to go ahead and just condition that portion of the path to be built, or the deferred improvement agreement. Like Greg said, we could kick it to the city engineer and the Creeks committee and let them decide. We could craft a condition that leaves it flexible and let those folks figure it out. This is our chance. My point is, this is our chance at the bite of the apple. Say parcel A is sold and there's just minor tenant improvements made with someone moving in there and running a business. We might not have a chance to condition a path for a number of years. So that's the only reason I brought it up.
Yeah, so I like the aspect of moving this towards the Creeks committee and the city engineer to figure it out. And no offense to us, I mean, that's what they're there for, their expertise. So that would be my preference on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then our comments during this meeting, they could take all these comments and digest it and figure out what's best. So Chair, are you
Commissioner-
looking for a motion?
Well, I wanted to see if Commissioner Strom was, she had any more questions or comments.
Nope, I'm supportive of the discussion and the comments on conditions of approval.
Thank you. Commissioner Heising.
Yeah, I'll throw a motion out. I propose we move forward with approving, what's the number on this map? Oh, it doesn't have a number yet. Okay, I propose we move forward with approving the map with a condition that the OED be vetted and approved by staff before it's recorded with the map, that we have a condition that puts all this discussion regarding walkway improvements to the city engineer and the Creeks Committee, and I defer to them. I propose that we defer to them on the best approach, and if we go down the route of making the creek improvements to the trail, that we also look at if any stabilizations needed on the creek itself. And am I missing a condition? Any other conditions that people had?
A friendly amendment, I guess, from me, as staff recommended earlier, to remove invasive plants and replace them with native plants. But I think that might have been encompassed what you were saying, but I wanted to make it clear.
Yeah, I think Jonathan already had that in there, right, Jonathan?
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
I also just add that it be formally a continuance to the January 19th consent calendar.
Right.
Okay. So so continue to a date certain of January 19th. That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We will now take a vote. Commissioner Heising.
Aye.
Commissioner Labange.
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Strong.
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich.
Aye.
And Chair Farzan. Aye. So unanimous approval. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other business? I don't think we do. Any commissioners' reports? Vice Chair Radnich.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't at our last meeting, so apologies if anyone from staff gave an update on the GPAC meeting. I don't know, Greg or Jonathan, did either of you give an update last time?
Please do.
Okay, let me pull up my notes here. So we have a meeting this coming Thursday, but we did have a meeting back on December 15th. And in that one, we had a presentation on the housing element and the regional housing needs allocation. And it was shared with us the general idea for the goals of the housing element to ensure there's enough land zone at appropriate density to accommodate each income level. There was discussion that it's the only element of the general plan that needs to be approved by the state. We kind of give a highlight of what CEQA is. And there was also discussion on digital engagement platform selection. They're going to use, we discussed single platform versus multiple services. So this is a way for the public to chime in, give input, for the city to solicit input from the community for the housing element, but also for the general plan as we move forward. And we also discussed a city mission statement update and what would happen there. Basically, the concept of updating the city's mission statement was brought to City Council in December. And council did kind of, we'll say like approve or direct the GPAC to work with the facilitator to update the mission statement. And GPAC, that also means though to receive community input on it throughout the process. And yeah, we have another meeting this coming Thursday for something. I don't remember for what, but for something. I haven't read the email yet. That's basically the update. It's interesting.
Thank you.
So far. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I know Greg sent around the YouTube of the December 15th meeting, if I recall too. So if anybody wants to see it from beginning to end, it's there too. So it's definitely interesting. I didn't watch it all, but I saw portions of it. It's very interesting. Do we have any other commissioners' reports? Planning director's report?
I was just going to report on upcoming GPAC meeting. I think a large part of it will be focused on the staff's proposed outreach strategy for engaging the community, soliciting input through the digital platform and other means and mechanisms moving forward. So I think that is all I had at the moment.
Great. Thank you. With that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Oh, wait, I am not going to. I'm going to pull that back as Jonathan has something he'd like to add.
Thank you, Chair. We are looking for an ARC volunteer for January 15th. And most of the ARC meetings in 2020 were done through email. But for the first few meetings in 2021, since we have new DRC members, we want to return to at least Zoom meetings. So if we get a volunteer for January 15th, we'll be having a Zoom meeting for ARC at 9:15 a.m.
It looks like Commissioner LaBonge is volunteering. Even if he's not, his hand is up, so he just got volunteered. That was a thumbs up. That's all good. All right, I'm going to ask you anything else. All right. Oh, no. Oh, there it is. Good.
It's just a quick thing. I was in the ARC volunteer for the last round, and I just wanted to Jonathan give you a heads up. I thought one of the projects we didn't resolve exactly what was going to happen with it, so I'm going to email you about that and just for a heads up on that, and maybe CC the chair too, so he can be aware.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay,
All
I'm
right.
done, Rashad.
Going once, going twice. All right, we're adjourned. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Happy